Welcome to Fan Fave with Katrina. Fan Fave with Katrina. It's time to talk pop culture.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Katrina, and this is Fan Fave, the ultimate pop culture podcast for fans of all forms of entertainment. If you love music, television, film, theater, or anything in between, you're in the right place. Sunday night, Hollywood's biggest stars united inside the Dolby Center in Los Angeles for one of the biggest nights in film, the 96th Academy Awards. My Super Bowl. Today's episode will be all about this year's Oscars. We'll be recapping the biggest moments and wins of the night. I also finally finished my annual Best Picture marathon. I watched all 10 nominations, and I will be sharing my thoughts on each movie and whether or not they deserved what they got or were they robbed in their respective categories. But first, it's time for a pop recap. Let's talk everything trending in the entertainment world that I haven't been able to stop talking about since the last time I spoke to you all. And it's going to be a very brief one. We're going to run through these topics fast because we have so much to talk about with this year's Oscars. So let's just get right into it. So in the film industry, I'm going to start with the biggest new release of the week to me, Kung Fu Panda 4. This movie is highly anticipated in my house. I loved the Kung Fu Panda franchise for years. I did have a slightly busy weekend, which I'll talk about a bit in a few, so I have not seen it yet, but I will be seeing it this weekend. Oh wait, I'm going to New York this weekend, but you know what? I will be tuning in soon, and when I do, I'll tell you all about it. It's doing really well though, and I'm happy about that because animated movies have been doing kind of shaky lately at the box office, and yet our favorite panda, Po, dethroned Dune Part 2 for the #1 spot at the box office. So I mean, come on now, everybody's going to see Kung Fu Panda 4. It's doing good. Keeping in line with our thoughts on animated movies, we got a new trailer for Inside Out 2, and I really loved the first one a lot. I think it's one of the best Pixar movies, like it immediately shot into my top 5 probably. And with this new sequel, I really love how it introduces new emotions that a teenager would experience, like envy, which is voiced by Iowa Debris, or anxiety, voiced by Maya Hawke. They're introducing some really cool characters. I just love the concept of Inside Out as a whole, like looking inside of this girl's mind, but like we're seeing how she's experiencing things in the real world and how she's reacting to them, but they kind of personify all of these different emotions, and I think it's just really interesting to see. It's such a creative concept for a movie. Inside Out 2 comes out on June 14th, and I'm so excited for it. It's going to be a really fun summer release. The next film thing that I want to talk about is more of an announcement. Now You See Me 3. Jesse Eisenberg recently confirmed that he has a script and he's hoping they start filming within the next 6 months. You guys, I had no clue this was happening. Like, I heard about it. I heard they wanted to do it. I think I watched the Now You See Me movies, both of them for the very first time, maybe 2 years ago. And that's when I read that they were planning on doing a third one, but it's been radio silent. It kind of sounds like one of those things where they say they want to do another movie, but then they never get around to actually doing it. And then like the actors kind of go off on their ways and they never do it. It seems like something they would do in like 20 years, those types of movies where they just randomly come back with a third one, like Bill and Ted or something like that. But Jesse Eisenberg is saying that they are coming back and he already has the script in hand. So I'm starting to get my hopes up because I really love these movies. And so if it's not just all speculation, I'm so excited to see what they do with this movie. The next film related thing I want to talk about is this Bob Dylan biopic, specifically what Timothee Chalamet recently said about it, because he said in an interview that he wants Austin Butler to show up in the Bob Dylan biopic. For those that don't know, Timothee Chalamet will be playing Bob Dylan, and obviously Austin Butler, he previously played Elvis. So Timothee Chalamet said that he would love to have Austin Butler's Elvis show up in the Bob Dylan biopic with him, and it would be so cool for there to be a musical cinematic universe where actors who were musicians in biopics reprise those roles in other biopics. I didn't see a video of Timothee saying this, so I'm not sure if it's sarcasm, like I didn't catch his tone, and I know he really said it because the trades covered it. But if he's not being sarcastic, or even if he is, I honestly think this would be a great idea. Like, somebody please do it. I'm now wondering if this has ever been done in something else, like a history movie or something. I don't know why I'm thinking, wouldn't it have been crazy if the Albert Einstein in Oppenheimer was the same actor from an Einstein biopic? I don't know why I just thought of that. I think because people were joking about when the trailer first came out, when they showed Einstein in that trailer, it was this huge reveal, like he turned around all dramatically. So now I'm thinking, like, what would it have been if that was like an actor that we knew from an Einstein movie? That could happen with this in like the music version of this. So I would move for that. I mean, Austin Butler, he would have to get that Elvis accent back again. But besides that, I think it's pretty doable. The last film thing I want to talk about is this new movie, The Idea of You. We recently got a trailer for it. It stars Anne Hathaway and Nicholas Galitzine, which I don't know if everyone's talking about this, but Nicholas Galitzine, he's like an up-and-coming actor, but I feel like he's been everywhere, like everywhere. I mean, I looked up some of his past movies just to see if it was just me like tripping, but in the past couple of months, he's been in Mary and George, Red, White, and Royal Blue, and Bottoms, and now he's in this. Like, he's been in so many movies recently, but this movie, it follows a divorced mother who falls in love with the lead singer of the world's most popular boy band. And honestly, I think the trailer, it kind of looks a little bit corny yet entertaining. But what I want people to know is that this is actually not a One Direction fanfic. I posted a couple of videos about this on social media, and there was a lot of confusion surrounding it because the boy band that is in this movie and Nicholas Galitzine's character as the lead boy band singer, he is basically like his own version of Harry Styles, and the rest of the group is reminding a lot of people of One Direction. In fact, they released a single for this group, and the single that they released was actually written by the same people that wrote What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction. So there's a lot of comparisons happening on the internet right now, and I looked around into it and found that it's actually not based off of a One Direction fanfic, like After, for example. That's a fan fiction that was turned into a movie, and they just changed like the names away from Harry Styles and One Direction. This is actually an original book that turned into a movie, but the main character, he was inspired by Harry Styles. So close, but not exactly a fan fiction. I will say though, I want a One Direction inspired movie that's not about dating them, but about being in a group where it falls all apart, like the drama of it all. It could be a fake group, a mockuseries, kind of like Daisy Jones and the Six, where it's a fake group and you're following them. I think we need more of those. Like Daisy Jones, it should have been an anthology. Maybe if it won the Emmy, I guess. That's what we're doing now, huh? I'm sorry. Moving on to theater. Let's start with the bad news. 2 Broadway shows have announced they are closing earlier than expected. Spamalot will be closing on April 7th, and Days of Wine and Roses will be closing on March 31st. It's never good to see a show end, but neither of these are super short notice, so you still have time to support them if you wish. Both shows do have some of the discounted ticket options that I talked about in last week's episode about Broadway ticket deals, so you have your shot to see them. They're closing, unfortunately, very soon. Now, new announcements in Broadway. 2 pretty cool plays are coming to Broadway, one officially and one sort of unofficially, but I think we can say it's coming. The first one is Othello. That's definitely coming to Broadway. It's starring Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal. It's not set to open until next spring, but I'm super excited about that. And then this unofficial play is Stranger Things, because they recently put out a casting notice, so we don't technically have the timing or the theater and all of the details, so I don't want to say it's definitely coming to Broadway, but they have started casting for the transfer of this Stranger Things play that was in London to come over to Broadway. It's based on the Netflix show. I'm sure it would do really well if it did come to New York. It's considered to be the first in a trilogy of stage plays set in Hawkins, Indiana, and it will be exploring the backgrounds of characters from this Netflix series. I'll admit I'm 4 seasons behind in Stranger Things, and I know there's only 4 seasons. That's my way of saying I have not seen it. I've watched like some of the first season when the first season came out, and I never got back into it. But apparently this one is about the character Henry Creel before he takes over the Upside Down, something like that. It's a new story though, basically a prequel, so I can get into it. It should be cool. Another new theater announcement is this Preacher's Wife musical that's happening in Atlanta. It's set to open in May at their Alliance Theater, and it has a very good cast that includes Loretta Devine and Amber Riley. The music is by Titus Burgess, and the director is Michael Arden, who has a really great track record. He most recently directed the revival of Parade on Broadway, which was so good, one of the best shows I have ever seen on Broadway. I'm kind of considering trying to go down to Atlanta to see this, you guys. I don't know, I'm very convinced this is going to be a really good show. And I've seen the Preacher's Wife movie and I really love it. So if you're in Atlanta, you should probably go check this out. I might try to because it looks really good. The last theater thing that I want to talk about is something I mentioned probably in our season premiere of the podcast, I want to say. I feel like I have a pretty good memory of what I talk about on here, and I think it was the premiere. But it's this concept that everyone returns to the Rouge. Moulin Rouge. It's been announced that Ricky Rojas is returning to play Santiago in Moulin Rouge on Broadway. This is his third run in the role. He originated the role when it first opened on Broadway, and then he left the first time back in 2022, and then he came back, when was that, 2023, and then he left again, and then he's now back again. So he's actually joining alongside Derek Klena, who is in his second or third run in the role, depending on how you count his Sunset Boulevard stint in DC. I just really love how everyone returns to this show. It's such a fun show to watch, so I can only imagine it's a great show to be in, and that's why people keep coming back. I mean, this has become such a pattern for this show. Everyone has come back. Aaron Tveit even left and came back. I think the next cast member I'd love to see return, though, is Ashley Loren as Satine, because I think she's my favorite actress I've ever seen in the role, and I've pretty much seen every Satine that has played the role in America, on the tour, on Broadway, minus maybe one or two. I've seen them all. So I feel like I could say, she's probably my favorite. She's so talented. I was actually at her very last show in the production, and that was last April. And I mean, I was like, wow, amazing. I've seen her multiple times, but that had to be her best performance, was her final one, and the energy was electric. I will never not talk about that specific show of Moulin Rouge, but I'd love to see Ashley Loren come back. Moving into the television industry, I'm just going to do a quick SNL recap. Over the weekend, Josh Brolin hosted the sketch comedy show in promotion of Dune Part 2, and Ariana Grande was the musical guest. I thought this was a pretty fun episode overall, maybe one of the best from this year. Ariana Grande, she performed 2 new songs off her album Eternal Sunshine, Imperfect for You and We Can't Be Friends. Both performances are so good, and I really loved the lighting and just the scenery that she put into these performances. It just looks so good. I posted a recap of the episode on TikTok, so check it out if you haven't already, but I just wanted to re-highlight my favorite moments of the night. First of all, the Moulin Rouge sketch, which is so personal to me as the super fan of Moulin Rouge that I am. The sketch was based more off of the movie, but they kind of played fun at all of the rotating songs in the jukebox musical that it is, and it starred Ariana Grande and Bowen Yang in that sketch, so it was a lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, it's probably my favorite sketch of the night. The other highlight for me of this episode was Lisa from Temecula's return. Hate her if you want, I love Lisa from Temecula, and Ego Woodham is my favorite current SNL cast member, but I promise you I am not biased. It's hilarious every time they do one of these sketches, and it's not just because they break character, it's just funny to me. I'd say this one might be the second best one of the 3 Lisa from Temecula sketches that we've gotten, just because of how absurd it is. I mean, this time around the table shakes out of control simply because she is trying to erase the tip, because they also charge gratuity. So yeah, a pencil makes the table shake that hard. And then she calls Bowen's character Negro Divergent, and I think that line was not on the cue cards at dress rehearsal because Bowen absolutely loses it. He just busts out laughing, and it's so funny. You could never make me hate the Lisa from Temecula sketches. Moving on to the music industry, a quick rundown of the new releases and new announcements. New releases include Ariana Grande's highly anticipated Eternal Sunshine, which is probably my favorite new release. I have to be honest, I was a little bit nervous when Yes and came out because I just didn't like it that much. I did enjoy the Mariah Carey remix a bit, but all in all, I wasn't the most confident that I would love this album, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I have to say that Yes and was probably the worst choice for a lead single because there's so many songs in the album that they outdo it. It's just so much better. And I'm not gonna get too deep with my thoughts for this album, just because I may or may not be considering doing a full episode on Ariana's discography on the podcast real soon, and if I do, I'm gonna do a full review there. But I'd say my favorite song, it's so hard to pick, but I have been listening to Bye a lot. Also, The Boy Is Mine, it's so good. Bleachers also released their self-titled album since we last spoke, and we also got new singles from Conan, Grande, Flo, and Luke Hemmings, so I'd say it was a really great New Music Friday. As for announcements, Zayn is back, and I'm so excited for it. He announced that his new single, What I Am, is out this Friday, and it's kind of giving a little bit of a folk vibe. Like, is he switching up on us? I can't wait to see where he's going with this new era. Shawn Mendes made an Instagram post to announce that he will be headlining Rock in Rio this year, but in the caption he also announced that he has been working on a brand new album and he will be playing new music there. I was just talking about how I needed Shawn Mendes to release new music on last week's episode, and now he's back. Amazing. Perfect timing for me. Also, Northwest revealed she is working on a debut album called Elementary School Dropout. I mean, she's literally been primed for stardom considering her parents are Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, so I'm curious to see what she will be putting out. Luke Hemmings has a new EP coming out called Boy on April 26th, and he's also going to be touring for it. I'm so hyped because he's doing not one, but 2 dates here in Washington, D.C., which I was kind of confused about because New York only got 1 date, so how did we get 2 here in D.C.? Like, that never happens, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll definitely be there at one of the dates, so I'm super excited about that. Speaking of touring, Kid Cudi announced a tour and Bleachers revealed that they're doing a one-night-only show at Madison Square Garden in October. I might be there. Tickets go on sale on Thursday and I will be trying. Shout out to my friend Gabby because me and her finna be in the pit at the Bleachers show at Madison Square Garden. Just you wait and see. The last music-related thing I want to chat about is that the Jonas Brothers took the stage in Australia for their tour, and they made their own Jonas version of the Bluey theme song. And it's so cute. I mean, I love Bluey. It's such an adorable little show, and the theme song, especially during, pandemic times, I don't know why, it would always just autoplay on, the television, and so I would get it stuck in my head all the time. And then I was actually in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I ended up getting the Bluey balloon, so I'm a long time fan of Bluey, and so they actually made their own version of the Bluey theme song with their names like Joe, Kevin, Nick. But instead of saying Bluey, they say Jonas. It's so cute. If you haven't seen it, pause this podcast and go check it out. Don't leave me, but go listen to it and then come back to me, okay? Moving on to the wildcard section, Disneyland in California hosted a Disney Channel night, which it seemed like everyone and their mother went to, by the way. I am very jealous of everyone that attended, but I need for them to have another one of these in Disney World. It looked like so much fun, and I feel that Disney World Orlando deserves to have this same amount of fun. I'd literally plan a whole trip to go down there and go to it if they had one. I mean, they had photo ops. It looks like they allowed for people to dress up in costumes. For those that don't know, Disney is really strict on adults dressing up to the parks. It's very rare when you're allowed to wear costumes just because they don't want kids confusing a random person in costume with somebody that's actually been trained and is following the Disney brand or whatever. And so Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party in October, it's a special ticketed event. That's typically the only time that adults are allowed to dress up in costume at the parks. And I'm going this year, so I'm so excited because I'm going to be able to wear costume. But I want to go to this Disney one. I saw so many cute costumes. I mean, somebody I was following on Instagram, she dressed up as the Check It Out girls from Sunny with a Chance. And then I saw another group of girls. They were the Cheetah Girls. I mean, just so fun. We need that. I need to go to a Disney Channel night at Disney World. Moving on to talking about what I've been up to, I had a pretty busy weekend and really just a busy week all week. But the one thing that I want to talk about today, I had the opportunity to attend the One Hallelujah tour over the weekend. It was a collaboration tour featuring Tasha Cobbs Leonard, Israel Houghton, Erica Campbell, Jonathan McReynolds, and Jacqueline Carr. And it was so much fun, you guys. It was in a way similar to another concert that I went to back in October, the Reunion Tour, which was also a group of gospel artists who united to tour together. And Israel Houghton, he was actually at that one too. This show I went to on Saturday was one of 2 sold-out nights at the MGM National Harbor, and one of the main things that I was impressed with was just how high energy it was and how flawless the vocals were. I mean, I was truly blown away. I feel like gospel singers in general, they tend to just have the most powerful vocals ever, and this was like no different at this concert. It was just, they were absolutely amazing. Like, don't even ask me whose set was my favorite. I would not be able to choose. I would really love to see more concerts do this setup. I know R&B artists have done this, but it would be really cool to see it happen with like pop music, where a bunch of different solo artists come together on a tour. It's giving the Avengers, you know what I mean? Like, it's so good. Now, our fandom corner, where we look into the world of fans and see what's being discussed, debated, or talked about the most in different online fan communities. This week in the world of fans, a clip of JoJo Siwa has been going around. For those that don't know who JoJo Siwa is, she's a dancer and child internet star. She's now grown up now, though. She's been in a few reality shows and stuff, but yeah, she got her start on this show, Dance Moms. And if you haven't been following with all of this Dance Mom stuff, the prime cast members from this show have been reuniting. They're planning a reunion special on Lifetime, so we've been seeing a lot of clips of them together lately, and I was pretty into Dance Moms when I was like 12, 13, you know, I was entertained, so I am interested in this reunion. But what everyone has been talking about this week is this clip of JoJo Siwa in the trailer for the reunion special, talking about how Maddie Ziegler, Kenzie Ziegler, and Nia Sue, all 3 of whom are not returning for this reunion. In the clip, she says them not being at the reunion is them trying to, quote, erase their past, shove it down the drain, when that's why they are who they are. And I think this is an interesting idea because it's not a new one. Fans complain about this kind of thing all of the time, so I thought I'd share my thoughts on it. We see this all the time with Disney Channel stars trying to shake off their kid image and people act harshly about them, or with former boy band or girl group members when they start a solo career and they just try to not sing any of the songs from the group and try to start anew, or even like internet stars turn musicians. I don't know why I think of like Shawn Mendes, but you don't talk about MadCon with Shawn Mendes anymore, even though that's where he got his start. And a lot of people, they'll fuss and complain like, why are you trying to erase your past? This is what made you famous. And I feel that sometimes the place where someone comes from or gets their start, it's not a happy place. So I feel like instead of judging someone for not wanting to return to a specific space, we should look at that space and wonder why they don't want to return. If you look at a lot of these Dance Mom reunion clips, these girls, they're revisiting their worst moments. They're crying as they discuss this stuff, and they were kids. I mean, I can't imagine how that must have felt, being yelled at your dance studio, constantly being told you aren't good enough. That alone is hurtful. And then on top of that, you're having your most humiliating moments be aired on national television, and you're only 9, 10 years old. Like, I would not want to go back to that. And some of the young girls who opted out of participating in this reunion have been very vocal and outspoken after the fact about some of the trauma and the abuse that they felt from being a part of this show. So I'd say props to Nia, Kenzie, and Maddie for knowing what's best for themselves and for protecting their peace. I really don't think that fans on the internet should be like fussing and complaining about the fact that they decided not to return to this reunion special. I mean, that should be each person's individual decision. And I must say, all 3 of those girls are killing it right now without the reunion. I mean, I follow Nia on Instagram. I know she goes to USC, and she actually just became a member of the same sorority that I've in. So I see her doing her thing. She was always my favorite on the show. And then Maddie, she's a really great actress. The Fallout is a really underrated movie, I'd say. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And then I know Kenzie is pursuing a music career, so they're booked and busy, and they're minding their business. They're chill. The second thing I wanted to talk about is in the midst of award season and movies like Dune Part 2 currently being out in the theaters, a lot of people have been talking about super long movie runtimes, and Jimmy Kimmel, he actually talked about it as part of his Oscars monologue, and I think that's what inspired this pretty controversial viral tweet that's been going around. I'll read you guys what the tweet says. It says, "If you think that it's dumb to sit in a theater for 3.5 hours for a film, you don't actually like movies, by the way." So this tweet, it's got over 550,000 people hitting on it, discussing, debating, fussing. as people on Twitter typically do, about whether or not this tweet is true. So I wanted to share my thoughts on this as well, because my thoughts are, let's not police how people enjoy movies. I mean, first of all, some people have attention disorders, so let's not downplay that. Some people's attention spans are simply just fried because of TikTok. Like, I get it. Many movies actually would even benefit from being shorter some of the time. Like, sometimes there's just a lot of fluff, and they actually probably would be better if they were cut down. Like, if a movie is 3.5 hours and it's not good, that's a problem. Nobody wants to sit through that. And then, of course, some people also, they just have preferences. I mean, do you think that just because I don't like horror movies, that I don't like movies? That's just an insane generalization to make. So I don't know, you guys let me know what your thoughts on. I mean, I'd say I frown up a lot of the time with long movies myself, but I just know that if I don't like a long movie, then I just watch it at home instead of go and sit up in a theater if I know that I'm not going to. And then again, like, I'm somebody that I've literally watched Killers of the Flower Moon, which is it is the longest Oscar movie from this year. It was 3.5 hours. I've watched it twice and I had no problem with it. So I think it depends on what the movie is, because I mean, I felt like that was something that was gripping the entire time, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but it really just depends. Let me know what you guys think though. On last week's episode, I shared the biggest tips to getting discounted tickets on Broadway in the midst of this stacked season. On social media, I put out a poll and asked you all, my fellow fans of pop culture, what new musical or play you are most excited about this season. I got 3 responses for The Notebook on Broadway, including from Georgia, Brian, and Marissa, who wrote to me and said, I saw it a couple weeks ago and I cried 7 times. One of the most beautiful shows I have ever seen on Broadway. I can imagine that, because I mean, a lot of people say that they cry when watching the movie The Notebook. So I'm sure like seeing it in person, like on stage, I can imagine a lot of people are bringing tissues to that show. Kiara reached out to me. She said that she is most interested in seeing Enemy of the People. That's a really good one. That's probably my most anticipated play because of the cast to me. I'm not going to lie, it has Jeremy Strong and Michael Imperioli, who I'd love to see on Broadway. And also it's in the Circle and the Square Theater, which is the #1 Broadway theater on my bucket list. I need to see a show there. It just seems like such a cool setup to be able to see a show in the round like that. Jordan reached out to say The Outsiders only because I had to read that book in middle school, so I have an attachment to it. That's valid. I feel like as if everyone had to read that book at some point in school. I oddly didn't have to read it until my senior year of college when I was taking a class on adolescent literature, but I did really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm probably going to see that one too. I also got responses from Chloe and Aaliyah for The Great Gatsby. That one seems pretty interesting. I'm not going to lie. I have no connection to the Gatsby franchise because I did not have to read that book in school and I never watched the movie, but I will say I'm interested in it. Although I may low-key be planning a trip to see the one at the ART in Boston. But you know what? It may be fun to see 2 versions or interpretations of the same IP on Broadway. It's been a while since like 2 shows have been on Broadway based off of the same thing. And so it might be pretty interesting, something to do. Make sure you're following on social media to participate in our next fan poll at Fan Fave Media because I love to hear from you. That's all for this week's pop recap. It was a little bit longer, I think, than I said at the beginning. We had a lot to talk about in the pop culture world. A lot has been happening lately. I think as we're getting into the summer, people are just dropping things left and right. But now we are going to get into the topic for today. So, as I said earlier, we are going to be talking all about this year's Oscars ceremony. We're going to start by talking about the awards, and then we'll move into the best moments. So I'm going to start with ranking the Best Picture nominations. So starting in 10th place, I have Maestro, which is directed by and starring Bradley Cooper. It follows this, I guess, love story between Leonard Bernstein and his wife. I think I ranked this so low because I was expecting it to be about his career and his life as a composer. And when it wasn't that, I was a little bit disappointed. And I have to admit, I didn't even know much about him. And when I looked him up, I was like, he literally composed West Side Story. And the most we got was like 30 seconds of an instrumental. And I just felt like the relationship between him and his wife was so surface level, especially, because he was cheating with her left and right. And so it never felt like anything worth watching. I feel like we should have gotten a biopic of his life first or something like that. Like, there's no real connection for me to know that Bradley Cooper is playing a real person in this movie, and I just was not tuned into this movie. It didn't interest me that much. I'd say there was one really good scene in this movie. I mean, I will say Carey Mulligan, she was really great in her role. Not to knock that at all. She was great. But the one really good scene that I'd say was a standout to me was when he does his performance at the cathedral in England and he's doing like the conducting there. The sound in that, it was just like, I was really drawn into that scene. It sounded really good, and I really enjoyed that one part. But everything else, I mean, it wasn't a standout to me. I know a lot of people have kind of given this movie bad reviews too, and I didn't even know that when I was watching and ranking it myself. But a lot of people have called this Oscars bait, and it left the Oscars empty-handed. I just didn't think it was that great of a movie. In ninth place, I have The Zone of Interest, and I know that's towards the top on a lot of people's movies. I will say with a lot of my rankings, it's not that the movie isn't good, it's just that I didn't personally enjoy it that much. And I'll say that the strongest part with The Zone of Interest, in my opinion, is sound, which is why I was so happy to see that they won for Best Sound, because I'm a little bit competitive, and I did like this Oscars watch party, and we all printed out ballots and guessed like who's gonna win or whatever, and I could have done better, but I kept trying to vote for not who I thought should win, but who I predicted the Oscars would pick. And so I ended up with a 16 out of 23, and there were so many close calls, and Best Sound was one of them, where I picked Oppenheimer knowing deep down that The Zone of Interest should get it, because the sound in The Zone of Interest is literally what shapes the whole movie. Without the sound in The Zone of Interest, it's kind of boring without it, really. And I think that's why I ranked it so low, is because at its core, it isn't the most interesting movie in my opinion. I think I really liked the direction and the cinematography in it. I mean, there's some really nice shots there. The movie, it actually starts with a black screen, and it threw me off a bit, to be honest, but it trains you into that way of viewing where a lot of the movie is actually about what you hear rather than what you see. And I think that's why it was so important that it got Best Sound, is because the sound moves the movie. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. There's something so chilling about all of the scenes where you hear what's happening next door at this concentration camp, but you don't see what's happening. And the way that this family is just so comfortably ignoring the devastation that's literally happening right in their backyard. It's like this dissonance, like between them walking around in their peaceful garden with a pool, but you're hearing screaming and gunshots in the background. I mean, the sound there is everything. As a whole, like I said, I just wasn't that compelled with this movie. The sound design, it was the best part, but in full, it didn't draw me in the way that I was expecting it to be. Because I would say when I was looking at this as my Oscars marathon, this was one of my most anticipated movies. Obviously, as a viewer, I know what the Holocaust is and what happened, so I didn't necessarily need that as an angle where I saw it in this film, but I also didn't really feel that reason to be drawn into this everyday mundane tasks that this Nazi family participated in. I get that the goal was ultimately to make you feel sickened in a way as the viewer, and I mean, obviously I was, just in the fact that they just casually live their perfect little lives while people are dying next door, and the way that they just completely ignored the slaughtering happening in their backyard. But beyond that, a lot of the film it felt boring to me because they focused so much on these simple tasks that the family was doing, like this whole story where the husband is going away to work, and I guess that's the point, is that their life is just going on. But I wish they pushed it a little bit further than what they did. And then I also just didn't really enjoy the ending, and I think that's a running trend with a lot of these Best Picture nominees, is they all kind of end a little bit oddly, where it's something jarring that happens. So in this case, we cut to a scene of the Holocaust Museum, and it's just, they're showing us janitors that are cleaning up around in the museum. And I guess it's to get you to think about what that was happening at that time and how we're now looking at it as history now, or something like that. But I wasn't feeling that as an ending, really. So that's kind of where it places in ninth place for me. Now, my eighth place spot, some of you are about to be really mad at me, but it must be said, it's Poor Things. And I'm not a Poor Things hater. Like I said, this is based off of my enjoyment. Like, this was a really good movie. I voted for it on my little ballot to get production design, makeup and hair styling, costume design. I know that it 100% deserved. And I'm going to talk about Emma Stone and her acting a little bit later because I want to spend some time specifically talking about that very tight actress in a leading role spot later. But I will say this was a very good movie that I just didn't like. I'm just not really big on sci-fi movies. I've talked about that before. The acting performances are very great in this, but I just did not like the body horror. Every time they cut something or someone open, I had to mute it and look away. Like the scene where she's literally like stabbing out eyeballs. Are you kidding me? I'm too squeamish for that. Like, I could not do it. The animals that were stitched together, like, no. And a lot of the movie, like, it has very beautiful shots. Like, I'm saying it's a very well-made movie. It's very imaginative. I get what they were trying to do with, like, this whole development of this girl from literally having an infant mind to exploring the world. And it's kind of like a coming of age story where, like I said, Emma Stone, I'm going to talk about her in a few, she puts in a lot of work to really display this shift from being like a little tiny child to a full adult that's experiencing all of these things in the world. She's learning about injustice and all of these different things. Like, I get it. It's a very good movie. I will say, though, that I felt that the plot did fall flat at many points. And I don't think that I was like, it was the middle part for me. The beginning kind of pulled me in, and the ending, I was sold on. The ending, this is one of the endings I'd say was pretty good. But the middle, I was just not a big fan of. In 7th place, I have Anatomy of a Fall. None of these movies are bad, to be honest. Like, this is a really good Oscar season. This is just how I'm rating the movies. I would say going into Anatomy of a Fall, I was expecting more of a crime, like, thriller type of movie. I was not expecting the majority of it to be a court case. But that being said, I loved it. I get why I won for Best Original Screenplay because it is absolutely riveting. Like, it really grips you in. It's also just so interesting to see how differently they do court in France because it was crazy. I mean, the language barrier that she had, that was kind of unfair. And I have to say that dog, a lot of people talking about this dog, but the dog is a star. Like, how did they get the dog to do all of that? Especially, like, in the end when it was pretending to die or, like, it was just being poisoned or whatever. How did it do that? Like, seriously. I'll say the ending is just okay. I felt like the ending was a little bit anticlimactic. I kind of don't like that we don't know what really happened. And I'm not even sure what they want us to think happened because I feel like based off of the evidence they presented in the court, it really sounds like she could have done it. But then at the same time, what the kid was saying and all of that, which the kid, he was a really great actor. I have to shout him out too. It's just, I don't know. Did she do it or did she not do it? I mean, how else did he fall in that position? I mean, I don't know. I will say, though, another funny thing about this movie is the song. It was just constantly stuck in my head. And then I did not know. Maybe this is just me. I mean, they mentioned it in the court case, but at first I didn't know that the song was literally a 50 Cent cover song because it's so catchy. And I went to like the YouTube video to listen to it again after watching the movie. And the comments are so funny. They're like, my husband keeps playing this song upstairs. My interview is ruined. I better go talk to him. Or somebody else said, this song reminds me of hearing my parents arguing one time, but I can't remember if I was inside or outside. Like, if you've seen the movie, you get that. It's so funny, though. I really enjoyed Anatomy of the Fall. I would say it's a pretty solid movie. The only reason I ranked it so low is literally because of the ending and because the other movies, just the competition was tight. So in 6th place, American Fiction. I'd say American Fiction was a really good movie. I'd say it was a comedy, and I found it to be very funny. I'm realizing now that I haven't given you guys, like, 1, spoiler warnings for this stuff, and 2, general synopsis. So I'll start doing that now. American Fiction, it's about a Black author whose books are not selling, and so he decides to sell out and write a book anonymously that is very stereotypical of Black culture, and this book ends up blowing up. It's very funny. I feel like I expected certain things when I went into these movies, and then they kind of go a completely different way than I would have thought they would. And this is another one of them. And that's not a bad thing. It's just interesting to see how different they were compared to like when I was reading about them or watching the trailer, how I thought things would be in terms of the tone. I'd say this one definitely deserved the award for adapted screenplay. And I have to shout out the screenwriter Cord Jefferson because he had a really great speech when he won the award at the Oscars. I just wanted to pull one quote from what he said. He said, "Instead of making one $200 million movie, make 10 $20 million movies." His speech was all about investing in young new talent. And I just thought that was really nice that he took the time to do that. He was talking about how a lot of people took a chance on him because this is actually his very first movie that he directed and wrote, and now he's an Oscar winner for it, which is such a great story, especially considering how hard Hollywood is to break into. And I mean, he did a really great job. Like I said, this is a really great movie. I think even down to the ending, it stuck the ending. This isn't one of the movies that I'm talking about where the ending was kind of weird or out there, and I think it really tackled a lot of the topics that they were trying to in terms of like the social topics while still being a really great comedy. In fifth place, I put The Holdovers. So The Holdovers is about a New England prep school, and these kids, it's a group of kids, but it later narrows down to one. Not to spoil. But he's at campus. He has to stay there over Christmas break because unfortunately his parents did not want him home, which is really sad. Paul Giamatti, he plays a teacher there. He was assigned to watch over these students during the break. And it's during Christmas break, if I didn't say that already. Davine Joy Randolph is also here. She plays the chef for the school. It's a really good movie. It's very heartfelt. It's a comedy. I was thinking this was going to win Best Picture for a while. I hadn't seen Oppenheimer at the time or any of the other movies that kind of won more awards than this. I think that it still really would have been a great choice for Best Picture, though. That being said, it's a feel-good movie. It's very comforting. It definitely has like a very classic feel to it. I really loved how it had this aesthetic of being vintage. Like even the intro credits, the whole movie really just sets you into the tone of the 1970s, and the stories of the characters, they're just very well written. As I just talked about, Davine Joy Randolph, she put on a fantastic role in this movie, and it was very well deserved. She won Actress in a Supporting Role for her performance in The Holdovers, and she was definitely my pick for it. So I was really happy to see her win. She also won the Golden Globe, so congratulations to her. In fourth place, I have Barbie. This movie was so much fun. I mean, how could I not rank it this high? It's cute, it's fun, it's feminist. Everything about it is so summer 23. I'm not being nostalgic about the summer of 2023, but Barbie, it was such a good movie. I mean, it's not really Oscars quality. I wouldn't have expected the Oscars to really give them a lot because it's comedy, it's silly. The Oscars tends to really focus on drama and serious stuff. So I wasn't expecting a bright, fun movie like Barbie to really take over, but we have to give Barbie their flowers. Like, that movie was so good. Greta Gerwig is an amazing director who was snubbed. I have to say that. In third place, I have Past Lives. This is a movie about a young girl who immigrated from Korea to Canada, and then she's living in New York. She actually had a crush or like a little short romance with another kid when she was in Korea, and then they hadn't seen each other or talked to each other in many, many years, and then they reconnect online because for some reason he's looking for her, and yeah, they start talking again. But this movie, it's all really about lost time, and not even just lost time, but just it's about what ifs, because, I mean, I don't want to spoil this one because this one is really good, but first of all, I would say, like, they're so real for digging around on the internet and trying to find old friends, because I do that all the time. I'll be so curious where people from my elementary school or middle school are now, kind of like in a way where I'm rooting for them. Like, I want to see that people are doing good that I went to school with, you know, but they were in love, and so they wanted to reconnect. You know, they reconnect, but I feel like the new romance is really just one-sided because Nora, the young girl, when she grows up, I mean, she gets married to someone else. It's not even really a love triangle. It's really just focused on this idea of well, past lives. You have to see it to understand it. It's like this whole like Korean culture thing where basically you can have like a connection with someone and they believe that, well, in another life they would be together. So it's all about like what ifs, if that makes sense. I think every Oscar season I really get lucky where there's a best picture that's really my fit, as in the type of movie that I would typically enjoy. And I feel like this year I had multiple of those movies, but this is probably the most up my alley movie out of all of the best picture nominations. And I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but the husband in this movie, he's a real one. I mean, he was a real one. The way that he was so respectful about this entire situation is really good. But I won't tell you it's not sad, because it is a sad story. And the way they do it, I'd say there's one cut in the movie towards the end that like I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was glued to my screen the last 30 minutes especially. In second place, I have Oppenheimer. I thought Oppenheimer was really well done. I mean, the cast in it is really strong and I was very entertained. I know I was just talking about super long movies, and I think I am someone that doesn't enjoy really long movies, but I was really entertained this entire time. I think one of the only complaints I really had about this movie was at first, I was a little bit lost on the different timelines, but I feel like it was something they kind of revealed a little bit later on, especially with Oppenheimer doing that trial where he was getting his license revoked. That was like a timeline I was slightly confused with a little bit, but I'd say Robert Downey Jr. was great. Cillian Murphy was great. Really, everyone was really great in this movie. I felt this was the best directing out of all of the categories for Best Director. I thought that Christopher Nolan did a really great job, although I have to say I was a little bit disappointed to find out that Martin Scorsese has only won one Oscar ever. He's got a lot of hits. And Killers of the Flower Moon is a really good movie. I'm about to talk about that. But Oppenheimer, with like the sound and just everything about it, it was a very well done movie. I've only seen it once. I want to rewatch it just to see things that maybe I might have missed, especially considering I don't know a lot. I mean, I know about the history and like World War II, but in terms of like the characters and the people, I'd like to see more about it. And I really enjoyed the storyline with Strauss as well, and that like timeline, the black and white one, because the ending twist, I don't even know if it's a twist, but it was a twist to me because, I mean, I don't know. That was so interesting because I didn't even think to put that together that he was the one that sent everything in. I'm like going on a rant about this, but Oppenheimer, obviously, it won Best Picture. I'd say that it was well deserved. It was a very great movie. But for me, I actually put as my number one Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, if we're making jokes about the runtime, this is the longest one. And as someone that doesn't like long movies, I still said this was my favorite. I just thought all of the performances in Killers of the Flower Moon were really great. And it's a story that's very important to tell. And I'm going to talk about actress in a minute. I feel like that's the most debated topic that everybody's been talking about for the past like 24 hours is the best actress category. But Lily Gladstone was phenomenal. And I know I just said Nolan had really great directing in Oppenheimer, but it was so tight. And I'd say that Martin Scorsese, like this film was really well directed. I didn't feel that this movie felt long at all. I do feel like I felt like a shift in terms of when the movie kind of shifted into another phase, like it could have been a part 2, but I don't think it should have been split. It was just like the first part of it was everything happening, and then, you know, like at a certain point it turns into like the court case part of it where they're investigating everything. And so for that reason, the way that it was made, it didn't feel like this long drawn out movie. It felt very intentional, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, Oppenheimer won Best Picture. And I mean, it was deserved. It was great, but that's kind of my ranking. And I really would say like my top 5 of Past Lives, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Barbie, and The Holdovers, those are like probably my favorites. And it was really hard for me to even put those into a coherent ranking. So I'm like trying to like share my thoughts with you all, but it's really all over the place because those movies, they were all very good. Like, most of the time when I do my Oscars marathon, there are some movies where I'm just like struggling to get through. But this season, I felt like for the most part, it was very enjoyable. Now, really quickly, just to shout out some additional awards that I did not mention, or just talking about these different awards. So I mentioned that actress in a supporting role went to Da'Vine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers, but actor in a supporting role, that went to Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. That was pretty much predicted, but I have to say that I really do wish that Ryan Gosling could have won, or even Robert De Niro. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. was great. Like, I'm not knocking that at all. But Ryan Gosling and Barbie, I think nobody took seriously as a contender. I feel like no one expected him to win. And I've just, from the moment I saw Barbie, I was like, that was a performance, because his comedic talent is just, it's 100% there. And then I also felt that Robert De Niro was really great in Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, he's a villain, but it was very well acted. Actor in a leading role went to Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. I don't really have any complaints about that. I mean, that was probably the top pick for that. I'd say that Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers was really great. I mean, didn't he literally fake a lazy eye for that movie? He was putting in work, you know? But Cillian Murphy, he played a real person, and I think that might have also kind of helped him to get the role. I mean, he really looks like Oppenheimer in the movie. And it's just such a monster of a movie to play. Like, all of the emotions that he goes through, from being this scientist to towards the end where he's kind of toiling with the fact that his invention caused all of these deaths. Like, all of that is kind of played out within Oppenheimer. And I think Cillian Murphy just did a really great job in the role. Now, I'll talk about actress and a leading role, because this one, they were going head to head, and a lot of people have been talking about it on social media, like, well, Lily deserved, or no, Emma deserved, and Lily deserved. So I wanted to share my thoughts. For those that don't know, Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon, and Emma Stone for Poor Things, those were the two front runners for this category. Ultimately, Emma Stone ended up taking home the award. I think ultimately I was happy with it going either way. I think my preference would have been to pick Lily Gladstone, just because I was more moved by her performance. And obviously, as you can tell by my rankings, I much more preferred Killers of the Flower Moon as a movie than I did Poor Things. But I won't knock the fact that Emma Stone, like I said, the movie Poor Things, since I didn't really go into it, it's about a woman, she's pregnant, that commits suicide. But I think her brain is partially sci-fi, so it's fake-ish. But apparently the science behind it is her brain was dead, but she was still partially alive, I want to say. And so Willem Dafoe, he's a scientist. I'm sorry, I don't know why I started laughing. I just thought about How I Met Your Mother. If you know the Willem Dafoe joke in How I Met Your Mother, that's literally how I always think about his name when I say it. But he's a scientist, and he does surgery on her to replace her brain with that of her child. It's a wacky plot. It's very out there. But with that being said, Emma Stone is a full-grown adult, but she has to step into this mindset of playing a child. And she does that, and then she also grows. I mean, her character basically matures throughout the entire movie from a child to a full-grown adult. So having to have that kind of acting, just having that range, she really did a really great job in the movie. Her performance in it was really well done, I have to say. A lot of people were saying that Lily Gladstone should have gone for supporting actress, and I'm not really sure that I agree with this necessarily. The point was, and this was also a big part of the debate, was, well, Emma Stone, she was in pretty much the entire movie. The entire movie is centered around her, and she has like all of the runtime. And so a lot of people were like, well, the Academy, they always confuse most runtime with best acting, and the runtime shouldn't correlate with how much acting you're in. And I kind of agree with this. And I saw a tweet. I don't remember the exact wording. I don't think I saved it. But they basically described Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon. She's basically the heartbeat of the entire movie. And all of the actions, even though she wasn't in as much screen time, everything revolves around her. And I felt like in her performance, she always did a lot without saying anything sometimes. And I felt like her performance was just very well done. And so I don't think that the screen time should have really correlated to whether or not she won. But yeah, this was a very tight category. I was literally on the edge of my seat for who would ultimately win. I wrote down Lily Gladstone, which is why I got that wrong. My 16 out of 23, you guys, it's fine. I still literally got more than everybody else. But yeah, I was like happy for Emma Stone ultimately because I knew that she did a great performance. It wasn't like it went to somebody that wasn't good. Now I'm just going to run through a couple more awards on here. Best Documentary Short, that went to The Last Repair Shop. And I have to shout this out because I just thought it was so cute. There was a little girl there. She was learning how to play violin and she went on the stage and everybody's talking about her on Twitter because she's so adorable and she's up there at the Oscars. I went back and I watched this documentary. It's a really great documentary, actually. It's about the Los Angeles County Public Schools being one of the only programs in the country left that still gives free instruments and free instrument repairs to students at their public schools. This program gives students an option to pursue music. And in a world where music education, it's losing a lot of funding, this was a very special story to see as somebody that did band all throughout elementary school through high school. The documentary, it goes back and forth between telling stories of 4 repair workers that work in the shop, and I loved how they did it because they showed how these repair workers got their start in music and their passion, and they really demonstrated it, and now they give back to the children. And then we also did get to see the children talk about their love for music and how happy they are that this program is able to help them, including the little girl that was on stage. She talks about her love for violin and how she's so happy to be able to take those classes at school. And it actually, my favorite part, it's very heartfelt and moving. At the end, there's an orchestral performance led by the little girl that plays violin. And it's actually all alumni of Los Angeles County Public Schools, and they're playing together. All of these students that were benefited by this program of free instruments, and they sound amazing. So it was really great documentary to check out. I also have to talk about original song, which went to What Was I Made For from the Barbie movie. Congratulations to Billie Eilish because she actually just became the youngest person to ever win 2 Oscars. That's incredible. I mean, her career is just like, it's crazy. She's received so many amazing accolades and awards, and she's so young. Now let's quickly chat about some of the other elements from this year's Oscars ceremony. My best dressed list, let's run down it. Carey Mulligan probably had one of my favorite looks. I love the very classy black and white dress, but I also have to shout out Gabrielle Union. Billie Eilish, I really liked Billie Eilish's outfit. I thought it was very her, but very cute as well. I also noted down America Ferrera and her little pink Barbie dress. Vanessa Hudgens, she had a really classy black dress as well, and she also revealed that she is pregnant, so congratulations to her. I also really love Cynthia Erivo's outfit. She's matching with Ariana Grande. They're constantly wearing their pink and green for the Wicked movie as Glinda and Elphaba, but I really loved Cynthia Erivo's outfit at the Oscars. And then Margot Robbie, she actually stepped out, and I don't think it was a Barbie related outfit. It was a really nice black dress, and I thought it was really cute. The last person I would shout out is Emily Blunt, whose dress I didn't even really like at first, but over the course of the night, it really grew on me. It's unique, but I really like this new kind of cream color, and with John Krasinski's cream alongside her, they were just a very beautifully dressed couple. For the most notable stuff of the night, first of all, can we talk about how they gave out these awards? Because they basically brought back alumni or past winners for different categories, and then they had them each kind of give a speech to each nominee. Now, this is not the first time they've done this type of format at the Oscars, but it's the first time that I remember them doing that. And I have to say that anticipation must have been painful to have to sit there and watch them give a speech to every single nominee before you find out if you win or not. I would be shaking in my seats. So I typically don't like a lot of random little banter at award shows, but I have a couple of moments that I noted that were very funny. First of all, John Cena. Host Jimmy Kimmel was talking about how 50 years ago at the Oscars, a streaker ran across the stage. And so they did a bit where John Cena he appears to be naked, and he's holding the Oscars card, just carefully covering himself up for best costume. And he has to go on stage appearing naked and talk about how costumes are so important. I thought that was a very funny bit. Another funny one was Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt on stage addressing Oppenheimer and creating a little bit of fake beef, talking about which movie did better than which. It was very funny because they didn't hold back. And then I also have to talk about Messi, the dog from Anatomy of the Fall. He's so well trained because he was literally clapping during the telecast and cheering on the winners. I mean, come on. It appears that there were some pretty mixed reviews about Jimmy Kimmel as a host. I feel like just in general, award show hosts, they tend to usually say jokes that don't land well. I'd say, though, I have to shout out Aidy Bryant. She hosted the Spirit Awards. She was probably the best host of awards season. But beyond the mixed results of Jimmy Kimmel's hosting performance, there has been one consistent narrative on the internet that I agree with fully, and that's that John Mulaney should host a future ceremony. So John Mulaney, he comes on stage to present the award for Best Sound. But while he's doing this, he goes on a whole tangent about the movie Field of Dreams, and he's talking about this whole plot. Everyone thought it was one of the funniest moments of the night, myself included. I mean, there's something so funny about John Mulaney and the way that he can just step on a stage and really just get your attention. Like, his delivery is top notch, and I think that he would do really well hosting a ceremony like the Oscars. He's definitely one of my favorite comedians, and he kind of grew on me because I feel like when I first started watching his specials, I was like so, but like now, like, his specials are so good. And so I really think he would do a great job hosting an award show because his little bit, he did it all by himself and he was hilarious. Going back to Ryan Gosling, I have to say he had the best performance of the night. And I can't even debate about it. Ryan Gosling, he performed I'm Just Ken from the Barbie movie, and he did it in a hot pink bedazzled suit. His performance was actually partially a tribute to Marilyn Monroe's Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend music video. I mean, if you look at them side by side, the outfits are very similar. But I really loved this performance. He brought out Slash for a guitar solo. He goes out into the crowd. He goes up to Margot Robbie. He goes up to Greta Gerwig. He's holding the mic. They're singing back to him. He even goes up to Emma Stone, you guys. It was so good, though. I thought this was the most fun performance of the night because Ryan Gosling, he's always going to deliver. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is too silly or embarrassing for him to do. He's going to go out there. He's going to get into character. He's going to deliver. And that's why he was the best role for Ken. And that's why, like I said, I wish that he could have gotten something for that role. Like, I think he would have been a really great pick for the best supporting actor. If he would have got that, like, I would have been on the internet defending him against all the people that want to hate on the Barbie movie and say that he didn't deserve it. Like, I would have been ready. Now, the final thing to talk about with the Oscars is this moment with Al Pacino at the very end when he announced Best Picture. A lot of people are talking about it. They said that he messed up. They said that he was confused up because he opens up the envelope right away. It's anticlimactic. He's just like, oh, I see Oppenheimer. And there's nothing that happens. It's just like he reveals it and they never say the nominees like they usually do. And can I just say, like, I mean, this isn't the worst mess up that they've done at the Best Picture portion of this ceremony. But Al Pacino, he actually came out and said that they told him to do it that way and that they didn't want him to say the nominations out loud because they already did like the little tributes in between, like the commercial breaks for each Best Picture. They got like their own little moment then, so they didn't need to be called out during the actual Best Picture portion of the show, which I disagree with. I think that they should have had that moment again, but I think they were on a race for time because, I mean, they started late and they started early, really. They started the telecast for the first time ever at 7 p.m. and it ended pretty early at 10:30. But for some reason, the telecast started about 7 minutes late, and Jimmy Kimmel, he was like, we're already 7 minutes behind. And so maybe it was because they were rushing. I'm not sure, but that's definitely one of the other most talked about moments of the Oscars. But there you have it. That's our Oscars recap. Let me know what your favorite moment from the show was or what your favorite movie was from this Oscars season. I want to hear from you. I've shared my favorites. I've shared my rankings. I don't know if people will agree with me or not, but my thoughts are my thoughts. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, tell a friend and make sure you let me know by leaving a review and following the podcast. As a reminder, at Fan Fave, it's all about the love for entertainment and the joy of being a fan. Fan Fave is active with even more content on social media, so make sure you don't miss anything. It's at Fan Fave Media everywhere. So connect with me because I want to hear from you, my fellow fans of pop culture. I'll see you next Tuesday when we'll dive into another aspect of pop culture. Thanks for listening and see you soon.